I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. These words from C.S. Lewis reveal a profound truth about surrendering to God's guidance. What does this act of surrender look like in our everyday existence? How can we transition from confusion to understanding, from worry to tranquility? In the next few moments, we will explore Lewis's path and provide you with actionable insights to change your life through divine direction. Are you prepared to uncover the straightforward action that can transform your connection with God and redefine your entire reality? Have you ever found yourself at a critical junction in your life, grappling with the weighty uncertainty that accompanies major decision-making? Perhaps you're currently navigating such a crossroad, weighing two distinct pathways, one entrenched in familiarity and self-reliance, and another that compels you to place your trust in a higher power. This moment of decision is pivotal, particularly when contemplating the act of surrendering to divine guidance. It represents a significant fork where the choice lies between autonomy and reliance on spiritual wisdom. On one side, we are drawn to the facade of control, the perceived safety of our meticulously crafted plans and aspirations. Opposing this, we encounter the potential of God's wisdom, an invitation that requires relinquishing our grip on the direction of our lives. The internal conflict that arises can be profound. Rapid-fire questions and doubts flood our minds. What if God's intentions diverge from my desires? Am I prepared to sacrifice elements of my life that I hold dear? How can I discern God's voice amidst the noise? Such apprehensions are natural, often rooted in our instinctual need for control and assurance in an unpredictable environment. Take, for example, the case of Sarah, a young finance professional at a similar crossroads. She had strategically constructed a successful career trajectory, yet a persistent urge toward missionary work prompted her to reconsider her path. The prospect of abandoning her stable position for the unknown was daunting. What if this choice proved to be erroneous? What if she encountered failure? Sarah's dilemma is emblematic of a broad human experience. Many confront pivotal moments where true faith necessitates stepping outside familiar confines. These instances challenge us to confront our core fears and vulnerabilities. However, the transformative truth that emerges from such decisions is profound. Choosing to trust in God can unlock a level of peace that transcends mere understanding. This commitment does not promise a life devoid of challenges or a guarantee that our aspirations will be met. Rather, it assures us of a guiding presence amid our journeys. Consider for a moment the possibility that what you fear relinquishing for the sake of trust could, in fact, impede your access to genuine freedom and purpose. Might it be that the plans we hold dear, despite their apparent merits, fall short of the extraordinary potential that awaits us through divine guidance? Opting for God's pathway grants us access to an extensive reservoir of wisdom that surpasses our individual understanding. It shifts our perspective from immediate circumstances to a broader, eternal view. The peace derived from this trust is not a transient feeling, but rather a deep-seated assurance that we are anchored to an unwavering force, regardless of the tumult we may face. Yet the critical question remains: what does this trust entail in our day-to-day existence? How can we transition from the theoretical framework of trusting God to the practical application of such faith in our often hectic lives? This inquiry will be the focus of our exploration next, as we delve deeper into the essence of surrender and its transformative potential across various facets of our existence. Envision for a moment that you're on the brink of a cliff, gazing into the abyss. Your thoughts are racing with fears and uncertainties. Now imagine yourself stepping forward, not into nothingness, but into the embrace of a loving Father. This embodies the true nature of surrender. Yet, how can we muster the courage to take that leap? Reflect on the last occasion you felt entirely out of control. What emotions arose in that moment? For many, such a sense of helplessness can be all-consuming and even frightening. We are accustomed to having our hands firmly on the wheel, steering our own path through life. But what if I suggested that relinquishing that control could be the most freeing decision you've ever made? Yielding control to God is fundamental to our faith journey. It involves acknowledging a wisdom that far exceeds our own, a love deeper than we can grasp, guiding our steps. However, let's be truthful. It's not simple, is it? Our aspirations, our dreams, the futures we meticulously design, they feel incredibly valuable and core to our identity. The prospect of entrusting them to God can seem like losing a piece of ourselves. C.S. Lewis, who grappled with this idea, once penned, "The more we let God take us over, the more truly ourselves we become." Isn't it a beautiful contradiction? By yielding to God, we don't forfeit our identity. Rather, we discover our most authentic selves. Yet, this realization doesn't necessarily ease the difficulty of surrendering. We still face struggles, doubts, and the tendency to cling to our false sense of control. A common misunderstanding is that surrender equates to passivity, that we merely sit back and wait for God to act on our behalf. However, that's not at all what biblical surrender entails. In fact, it's quite the contrary. Genuine surrender is a proactive, brave choice we make each day. It's about aligning our desires with God's, seeking His direction in our decisions, and trusting His plan even when it seems illogical to us. Lewis articulates this beautifully. If you have really handed yourself over to Him, it must follow that you are trying to obey Him, but trying in a new way, a less worried way. Can you envision that? A life where you're actively involved, making choices and taking actions, but without the burdensome weight of anxiety and fear? That's the liberation that comes with surrender. So what does surrender look like in real life? It manifests in the quiet moments of prayer when we utter, "God, I don't know what to do, but I trust you." It shows in the bold acts of faith when we follow His guidance, even when it diverges from our own plans. It exists in the everyday decision to seek His will above our own. And here's the amazing part. By practicing this surrender, by loosening our hold on control, we start to encounter a peace that transcends all understanding. We discover purpose not in our limited perspective, but in God's eternal strategy. Our worries gradually diminish as we find rest in His love and wisdom. Recall the cliff we initially stood upon. Surrender involves taking that step off the edge, confident that we're not plunging into nothingness, but into the arms of a God who loves us beyond measure. It can be frightening, yes, but it's also the most liberating act we can undertake. But how do we nurture this trust in our daily lives? How do we transition from merely understanding surrender to genuinely embodying it? That is what we will delve into next as we explore practical methods to make surrender a part of our daily lives, transforming our relationship with God and reshaping our entire existence.
Have you ever thought about what it might feel like to wake up every day without that familiar feeling of anxiety in your stomach? Envision a life where having faith in God is as effortless as breathing. It may seem unachievable, but what if I told you there's a method to foster that sort of steadfast faith, even amidst the chaos of life? Trusting God is not merely an emotion that fluctuates. It's a skill we can nurture and enhance over time. Consider it like a muscle. The more we train it, the more robust it becomes. However, let's be real. Sustaining that trust in our tumultuous world can resemble trying to stand firm on a tightrope in the middle of a storm. Life hurls unexpected challenges, disappointments accumulate, and at times, it seems like God is nowhere to be found. So how can we close that gap? How can we transition from recognizing the value of trust to genuinely embodying it in our daily lives? It commences with small, deliberate actions. Think about starting your day with a simple prayer, offering your plans and concerns to God. It may feel uncomfortable initially, but gradually it can turn into a routine as natural as your morning beverage. Another impactful habit is maintaining a gratitude journal. I know it may sound a bit overused, but there's something truly transformative about consistently noting the blessings in your life, regardless of how minor they seem. It shifts our attention from what's not going well to what is, serving as a reminder of God's faithfulness during difficult moments. Do you recall Sarah from earlier? She began to weave these practices into her everyday life. At first it felt forced, and she was skeptical of any change. However, as days turned into weeks, she observed a transformation. The anxious knot in her stomach started to ease. She found herself handling challenges with greater patience and tranquility. Trust is not solely about our actions in moments of solitude. It's about how we conduct our lives. It involves making the conscious choice to recognize God's presence in everyday experiences. Perhaps it's expressing gratitude for a stunning sunset or seeking His guidance before facing a challenging discussion at work. These seemingly minor acts of trust may appear insignificant, but they're like seeds sown in rich soil. Eventually, they flourish into a solid, unwavering faith. Now, I'm not suggesting this journey is straightforward. There will certainly be days when trust seems unattainable, when doubts arise, and fears become overwhelming. But here's the beautiful reality. As we repeatedly opt to trust God, even in the smallest of ways, it starts to transform our entire outlook. We begin to perceive challenges not as insurmountable barriers, but as chances for God to demonstrate His faithfulness. Imagine confronting a tough situation and, instead of feeling consumed by anxiety, experiencing profound peace. Visualize yourself navigating the ups and downs of life with steady assurance, aware that you are embraced by an unending love. This illustrates the transformative nature of sustained trust. But what occurs when our trust is genuinely challenged? When life's tempests strike fiercely and everything we believed is unsettled? That's what we'll examine next, as we delve into how to endure life's hardest moments with unwavering faith in God. Have you ever experienced your faith falter when life's storms strike with full force? Imagine this. You're on a beach, waves crashing around you, the wind roaring in your ears. It's tough to maintain your balance, isn't it? That's often how trusting God feels during the hardest times in life. Let's be honest for a second. Believing in God doesn't make us immune to challenges. It's not a protective barrier that turns away all of life's obstacles. Sometimes the storms arrive and they can be quite brutal. We may lose loved ones, encounter health issues, or deal with financial strain. During these times, our faith can feel unstable, like we're trying to stand on shifting ground. Think of Job from the Bible. He endured the loss of everything, his wealth, his health, even his children. Can you fathom the anguish he experienced? Yet amidst his suffering, he made the profound declaration, "Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him." That's trust on a different level, isn't it? But I'm sure Job had moments of uncertainty too, times when he doubted God's plan. When we're facing hardships, it's normal to wrestle internally. We might wonder, "God, where are you in this?" Or, "Why is this happening to me?" Such questions don't indicate that our faith is weak. They're a part of our journey, part of our development. Engaging with these doubts can actually strengthen our faith. Consider this. Have you observed how trees with deep roots grow stronger during storms? The wind and rain that seem to threaten their existence push them to deepen their roots. Our faith can flourish in the same way. The hardships we endure, although painful, can compel us to hold on more tightly to God. The Apostle Paul recognized this truth. He encountered imprisonment, persecution, and numerous struggles. Yet, he proclaimed, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul discovered strength not in the absence of challenges, but in experiencing God's presence amid those challenges. Now you might be wondering, that's inspiring for biblical figures, but what about me? Here's the wonderful truth. The same God who reinforced Job and Paul is with you right now. He's not far away or oblivious to your challenges. He's right there in the storm with you, providing His strength when yours feels diminished. As we lean on God during these trials, something extraordinary occurs. We cultivate a spiritual resilience that can endure any storm. It's as if we're building spiritual strength, becoming more robust with every obstacle we encounter. This doesn't imply that the pain vanishes or the issues are swiftly resolved, but it does mean we discover a peace that transcends comprehension, a strength that comes from beyond ourselves. C.S. Lewis expressed this beautifully when he remarked, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world." At times, it's in our darkest hours that we hear God's voice most distinctly, that we feel his presence the strongest. So, the next time you find yourself in the midst of life's storms, keep this in mind. Your trust in God is not merely weathering the storm, it's growing through it. You're becoming more resilient, more faithful, and more in tune with God's voice. And that growth, it not only affects you, it sends ripples out, impacting the lives of those around you. But how does this trust influence our connections with others? How does our faith during trials affect those in our lives? That's what we'll explore next, as we delve into the beautiful ripple effect of a life grounded in trust. Have you ever observed how an authentic smile can be infectious, passing from one person to another? Trust in God functions in a similar manner, but with much deeper implications. What if your unwavering faith could create a ripple effect, impacting lives you've never encountered? Let's delve into how the seeds of trust, when sown in nurturing community soil, can flourish into a grove of unshakable faith. Trust isn't merely a personal relationship between you and God. It's a potent force that has the capacity to transform whole communities. When we opt to trust God, even amidst uncertainty, it does not go unnoticed. Our friends, family, and neighbors perceive the tranquility that emanates from us and the strength we gain from our faith. This curiosity leads them to wonder, what is different about her? How can he stay so composed during this turmoil? However, let's face reality for a moment. Upholding trust in God while those around us are engulfed in doubt is not always straightforward. Perhaps you've felt this. You're striving to cling to your faith while your colleagues exhibit constant pessimism. Or maybe your family members question your continued belief in a God they cannot perceive. It can feel like you're swimming upstream, right? Yet, it's during these trying times that our trust can create the most significant influence. Reflect on the early church in the book of Acts. They encountered persecution, skepticism, and enormous obstacles. Nevertheless, their steadfast trust in God cultivated a community so dynamic and filled with love and support that it drew others in like a magnet. People couldn't help but recognize the difference in their lives. Think about it. When we trust God, it alters how we interact with others. We become more patient, more forgiving, and more inclined to see the best in others. Why is that? Because we are secure in God's love for us. We have no need to prove ourselves or compete with one another. This transformation in our relationships can be revolutionary. Envision a workplace where trust in God fosters honesty, integrity, and mutual assistance. Imagine a neighborhood where families pray for each other and readily offer a helping hand. These aren't merely pleasant thoughts. They represent genuine potential when we permit our trust in God to influence our communities. Consider the Alpha Course, for instance. This initiative has achieved remarkable success in nurturing supportive faith communities. As individuals share their stories of trusting God, others find the bravery to discuss their doubts and struggles. The outcome? A culture of authenticity, support, and a growing faith. But here's the thrilling aspect. It all begins with one person. One individual opting to trust God can trigger a chain reaction. Your commitment to remain faithful during challenging times, to choose love rather than resentment, to offer grace when it's unwarranted, these decisions create ripples, impacting lives in ways you might never fully grasp. Studies indicate that behaviors and attitudes can spread through social networks. Your trust in God isn't merely transforming you, it's likely influencing your friends, their friends, and even more. It's akin to dropping a stone into a pond and witnessing the ripples extend far beyond the initial splash. So, what if your steadfast trust in God could ignite a spiritual movement within your community? What if your faith could serve as the spark for a culture of support, love, and shared purpose? As we collectively trust God, we establish a safe environment where others can convey their fears and doubts, finding strength in our united faith. However, this prompts an essential question. How does this communal trust correspond with our understanding of God's character? What does our collective ability to trust Him reveal about who He is? That's what we'll examine next, as we further explore the essence of the God we are called to trust. Have you ever considered whether the God you believe in truly deserves such deep faith? It's a question many grapple with, particularly when life presents its most difficult trials. Grasping God's essence is not merely an academic pursuit. It's the cornerstone of our capacity to fully trust Him. Let's take a moment to be truthful. We all experience uncertainties and misunderstandings about God's nature. Perhaps you've questioned, if God is good, why does He permit suffering? Or maybe you've pondered, how can I place my trust in a God I cannot see or feel? These inquiries are entirely normal, and wrestling with them may actually strengthen our faith. C.S. Lewis, who wrestled with these exact concerns, once expressed, "I believe in Christianity, as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else." His reflection reminds us that comprehending God's nature sheds light on every facet of our lives. So, what essential qualities make God dependable? The foremost among them is His unwavering character. The Bible states in Hebrews 13:8, "Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever." In a constantly changing world, isn't it reassuring to realize that God is unchanging? Reflect on God's love for a moment. It's not a capricious feeling that fluctuates, but a steady, constant force. Lewis profoundly described this when he said, "God does not love us because we are good, but God will make us good because He loves us." This love isn't contingent on our actions or merit. It's an intrinsic aspect of who God is. God's loyalty is another characteristic that strengthens our trust. Recall the multitude of promises found in the Bible? They're not merely hollow statements. Psalm 145:13 confirms, "The Lord is trustworthy in all He promises and faithful in all He does." When we feel lost or deserted, we can hold tight to these promises, confident that God always fulfills His word. But what happens when God seems mute? Those times when our prayers feel like they're just bouncing off the ceiling. Even during these periods, God is at work. As Lewis expressed, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Often, it is in the silence that God accomplishes His deepest work within us. As we delve into God's character, we start to recognize a love that is immeasurable, wisdom that surpasses our own, and faithfulness that remains constant. This knowledge does more than just expand our intellect. It transforms our hearts. It empowers us to trust God not only in moments of joy, but also during life's lows. Consider how your life might transform if you genuinely believed, deep within yourself, that the God of the universe is entirely trustworthy. How would it influence your choices, your interactions, your reactions to difficulties? The more we comprehend God's nature, the more our trust in Him flourishes, creating a remarkable cycle of faith and understanding. But here's the amazing part. This trust not only alters our relationship with God, it begins to reshape our very essence. So how does our increasing trust in God's character redefine who we are? That's what we will investigate next as we explore the transformative impact of a life rooted in trust. Have you ever gazed into the mirror and contemplated the person you're evolving into? What if I said that placing your faith in God could entirely redefine your identity, changing you fundamentally from within? This isn't merely a lovely concept. It's a significant truth with the potential to alter every aspect of you. When we engage in discussions about having faith in God, we're not merely talking about a cognitive task or a temporary feeling. We're referring to a complete transformation of our entire essence. It's akin to entering a river that gradually smooths and reshapes our roughness, aligning our character with God's heart. However, let's be truthful. Change is often challenging, isn't it? Our inherent human nature can frequently resist change, holding on to the familiar even when it isn't beneficial. Perhaps you've experienced that internal struggle, wishing to trust God more profoundly while feeling apprehensive about what that might entail for your life. It's perfectly acceptable to recognize that conflict. In fact, Acknowledging it is the initial step toward accepting the transformation God aims to bring forth in you. As we practice trusting God, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Our values and priorities start to evolve. Aspects that once appeared crucial, like success, status, and material wealth, begin to diminish in their significance. Instead, we start to long for the elements that resonate with God's heart: love, compassion, justice, and mercy. Recall Sarah, the young professional we discussed earlier? As she ventured out in faith, heeding God's call for missionary work, she observed a significant change within herself. The ambition for career achievement that once drove her was supplanted by a profound desire to help others. Her outlook on money transitioned from accumulating it to embracing generosity. Even her relationships were transformed as she learned to offer others God's unconditional love. Sarah's experience is not an isolated case. Numerous individuals have encountered the life-altering impact of placing their trust in God. Consider the Apostle Paul, who transformed from a persecutor of Christians into one of the most impactful followers of Christ. Or think about C.S. Lewis, who moved from atheism to becoming a significant advocate for faith. Their journeys serve as proof of the deep transformation that trusting God can facilitate. Yet here's the thrilling part. This change isn't exclusive to biblical figures or renowned writers. It's accessible to all of us. By choosing to trust God each day, we invite His refining influence into our lives. We gradually begin to mirror more of His character, His patience, kindness, and forgiveness. Can you envision what your life could resemble if you wholly embraced this trust? Imagine waking each day with a profound sense of purpose, aware that you're evolving into the person God designed you to be. Picture approaching challenges with newfound strength, anchored in the unwavering love of your Creator. This path of trust leads to significant personal development and a fulfillment that surpasses anything the world might provide. It's not devoid of difficulties, and there will be times of hardship. However, as we continue to trust God, we encounter a joy and peace that transcends our situations. Now, here's a thought to consider. How does this transformative trust influence our sense of purpose and calling in life? As we align more closely with God's heart, in what ways does it mold our understanding of our existence? That's what we will examine next, as we delve into the beautiful process by which trust in God reveals our distinct role in His grand design. Have you ever felt as though your life resembles a puzzle with vital pieces missing? You're in good company. Many of us have faced uncertain moments, contemplating our purpose and questioning God's intentions. During these times, having faith in God's overall plan for our lives becomes not only significant, but necessary. Consider the last occasion when you felt lost or unsure about your life's path. Perhaps that describes your situation right now. The struggle of not comprehending our purpose can be quite intense, can't it? We frequently find ourselves pondering, God, what is the purpose of all this? Or why am I encountering these situations? These inquiries are completely normal, and they are part of our journey toward grasping God's larger plan. But here's a comforting truth to reflect on. What if every event, every success, and even every struggle is a stroke of a brush in a masterpiece that is not yet visible to you? Trusting in God's plan doesn't mean we have all the answers. It involves having faith that there is a reason behind our experiences, even when we cannot perceive it clearly. Recall the story of Joseph in the Bible? Abandoned into slavery by his siblings and incarcerated for years, it appeared his life was filled with a succession of unfortunate, random events. Nevertheless, in the end, all those circumstances positioned him to rescue his family and an entire nation from starvation. Joseph's narrative serves as a reminder that God can interlace even our hardest times into His grand design. C.S. Lewis once stated, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." This significant thought encourages us to have faith that God can work through our past, present, and future to accomplish His purpose for our lives. It's about trusting that our narrative is part of a bigger story that God is crafting. Have you ever faced an event that seemed arbitrary, but later turned out to be crucial in your life? Perhaps it was a serendipitous meeting that opened a new door, or a setback that ultimately guided you to your true vocation. These instances are often God's method of leading us, even when we fail to recognize it at the moment. As we cultivate trust in God's plan, we begin to perceive our experiences from a fresh perspective. Suddenly, the detours and delays in our lives transform from mere frustrations into chances for growth, learning, and preparation for what awaits. This change in mindset can provide a deep sense of peace and purpose, even amid uncertainties. But consider this exciting notion. What if your distinctive combination of experiences, skills, and passions is precisely what God intends to utilize to create change in the world? Trusting in God's plan is not merely about passive acceptance, it's about actively seeking to comprehend our role in His magnificent design. As we align our hearts with God's, we start to uncover our unique calling. It may not resemble our initial expectations, but it's often far more rewarding than anything we could have envisioned ourselves. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." Embracing God's plan brings a sense of purpose and direction that transcends mere career accomplishments or personal success. It involves discovering our place in God's narrative and experiencing the joy of collaborating with Him in His work throughout the world. However, here's a question to contemplate as we wrap up. How do we maintain this trust when God appears to be silent? When the pieces of the puzzle still seem misaligned, how do we cling to our faith in His plan? That's what we will delve into next, as we embark on the challenging yet rewarding path of trusting God in the moments of silence. Silence can be overwhelming, particularly when we are earnestly searching for answers from God. But what if those still moments are not void at all? What if God's silence serves as an invitation to something far more profound than we have ever encountered before? Let's be frank. Trusting God during times when He appears distant is among the toughest aspects of our faith journey. Have you ever expressed your deepest feelings in prayer, only to experience what seems like a vast silence? It's during these times that doubt can start to enter, murmuring questions we may be hesitant to ask. Is God truly listening? Does He care about my struggle? The frustration and uncertainty during these silent periods can be quite daunting. We may find ourselves reevaluating everything we believed about our relationship with God. It feels akin to being in a dark room, desperately trying to locate a light switch that seems just out of reach. But what if, in that darkness, God is actually doing His most significant work? Consider this perspective. Have you ever observed a skilled craftsman at work? At times, the most essential parts of their process unfold behind the scenes, away from the observant eye. God often functions in a similar manner. The fact that we cannot see or feel His presence doesn't imply He isn't actively shaping our lives and our hearts. Recall the story of Job? He faced terrible suffering and sharply felt God's absence. Yet amid his anguish and bewilderment, Job professed, "Though He slay me, yet will I hope in Him." That's the kind of trust that is formed in silence, a faith that transcends emotions or situations. Or think about the prophet Elijah. Following his dramatic confrontation with the prophets of Baal, he found himself alone in the wilderness, feeling forsaken by God. However, it was in that quiet environment that Elijah met God in a gentle whisper, gaining a crucial understanding of God's presence in stillness. These narratives remind us that God's silence is not the same as absence. It's an invitation to draw nearer, to listen more carefully. It's in these tranquil periods that our spiritual roots often deepen. Consider it like a tree in winter. On the surface, it may appear bare and lifeless, yet beneath the soil, its roots are growing, preparing for a period of growth and fruit. So, what if we welcomed these silent moments instead of resisting them? What if we regarded them as chances for spiritual development rather than times of neglect? C.S. Lewis once expressed, "I know now, Lord, why you utter no answer. You are yourself the answer. Before your face questions die away." what other answer would suffice? As we learn to trust God during the silence, a beautiful transformation begins to unfold. Our faith evolves, becoming less reliant on emotions or visible indicators and more anchored in the unchanging essence of God. We gain a deeper comprehension of who God is, beyond what He does for us. It's a shift from spiritual infancy to maturity, from a faith that requires constant validation to one that remains steadfast even in turmoil. Yet here's a question to reflect on as we conclude. How does this trust, nurtured in both the clamor and the quiet of life, ultimately reshape who we are and how we live? That's what we will investigate next, as we delve into the significant ripple effect that a life grounded in trust can have on ourselves and the world around us. You've come to rely on God during the quiet times, but what if I suggested that this reliance could ignite a revolution, not only in your life, but in the lives of many others as well? It may seem improbable, yet history reveals a different narrative. Are you prepared to learn how your individual act of faith could serve as a trigger for change on a scale you never anticipated? Now, visualize the ripple effect of a single stone tossed into a calm pond. This is exactly what occurs when we completely yield our trust to God. It begins with us, but it certainly doesn't finish there. Our faith holds the potential to guide our choices, mold our connections, and create a lasting impact that surpasses our personal existence. However, let's be realistic. Keeping an eternal viewpoint amid our hurried, temporary world is quite challenging, isn't it? We are constantly inundated with messages urging us to focus solely on the present, to value immediate satisfaction over enduring significance. It's similar to trying to keep your gaze fixed on the horizon while navigating through a carnival. Distractions abound at every corner. Yet, when we opt to trust God, something extraordinary unfolds. Our choices start to correspond with His intentions, rather than just our own wants. Just consider, how might your decisions shift if you sincerely believed that God was influencing every facet of your life? Perhaps you'd be more likely to forgive someone who wronged you, understanding that God can utilize even the most painful events for a greater purpose. Or maybe you'd take that courageous step toward a new job, believing that God's plan surpasses your comfort zone. Our connections are also transformed in this process. When viewed through the perspective of God's eternal love, our relationships gain new layers and significance. Have you ever observed how individuals gravitate toward those who radiate a calm assurance in God's reliability? It's as if they carry a light that others wish to bask in. Reflect on the example of William Wilberforce, a British politician whose steadfast faith in God drove him to relentlessly combat the slave trade. His faith-infused dedication not only transformed laws but also altered the moral compass of an entire society. One person's trust in God genuinely changed the trajectory of history. However, you don't need to be an illustrious historical figure to make an impact. Consider the Sunday school teacher whose consistent love nurtures seeds of faith in young minds, or the neighbor who performs quiet acts of kindness in Jesus' name, bringing hope to a family in distress. These seemingly minor acts of faith create ripples capable of transforming neighborhoods and even countries. As we adopt this trust-oriented way of life, we begin to perceive our daily experiences as chances for God to act through us. That challenging co-worker? An opportunity to demonstrate Christ's love in practice. The surprising financial challenge? A chance to rely on God's provision and perhaps uncover a new depth of generosity. Here's the wonderful reality. When we completely trust God, we become vessels of His love and grace for the people around us. Our lives turn into living testimonies, conveying more powerfully than words ever could the faithfulness of our God. So what's the following step in your path of trust? How will you permit God to manifest through you, generating ripples that reach far beyond what you can see or envision? Keep in mind that every significant movement of God began when someone chose to trust Him wholeheartedly. Will you step up as that person today? Today, I challenge you to take one small step towards deeper trust in God. Maybe it's starting your day with a simple prayer, or choosing to see a challenge as an opportunity for growth. Remember, every journey of trust begins with a single step. And remember, as C.S. Lewis once said, I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. God is eagerly waiting to walk with you, illuminating your path and revealing the beauty of His plan for your life. Are you ready to take that first step?